Hello guys, welcome back to Endurance again. This time it's not an update video. It's not an update video. No, what am I doing? Okay, well okay, the first bit is an update video. Look, we've got a pool table L-Cars. Isn't that totally badass? And we've also got running. My favourite, totally cool. Full render, detailing various little bits and pieces. I really like that one. Really like that one. And also,
please specify destination.
New navigational screen, because the set extensions for the Federation station are done.
Destination confirmed. Course adjusted.
Yippee! How cool. That was a pain in the butt. Anyway, pretty much my task list is down to like 3 things before release. Unfortunately, they're the worst possible things. I was hoping to get it all done by today, and then me and Callum could test it tomorrow. I'm still going to test it with him because I've actually already sent him a copy of the map and we'll just use this copy. It's fine. It's pretty much where it's going to be, so I'm not really worried. This is still the killer. Like, if everybody who watches this video just posts one thing that's on the shelf behind them, it probably solves my problem, but I just cannot for the life of me think of stuff to fill this space. That's going to be the killer. But we don't need that. These models are already in place, like this model here, which I can walk through. I just have to put the items on it. It's already the same number of entities that it will be when it's released. Which is comparable to Asteria, but substantially less brushes, so I'm a bit worried about stability for some people, but we'll get to that. Did anyone know that I'd left this in? So we could remove this? Probably not. But there was one comment mentioning the fish in this room, and that's what this video is about. It's about fish, because I spent one day modelling 3 fish, and that's probably why I'm a bit behind schedule. Now, I'm not going to look at the fish tank yet because it's had a bit of a resculpt. You remember that kind of horrible blue manky looking sea, saltwater based tank? Well, now it's a green freshwater based tank with fish in it. Look at that. Look at the wood and everything. Ignore the fish, they're not relevant at the moment. We'll get to that in a minute. And all the plants and stuff. It looks so cool. I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it. Now, these are 3 species of fish. I forget what they're called. These are clown loaches, and these are plecos. Plecos. Yeah, I like plecos. And basically, these are really low resolution fish. Like, they're not going to win most awesome fish model of the year awards because they look absolutely terrible. I mean, they look like fish. But basically this is what this video is about, these fish, and I have no idea how long it's going to be, because basically what I did is originally the fish tank was part of this model, so it was kind of spread out, and I think this table and these items here are all part of this one model. I've separated it, increasing the map entity count by 1, and then I've got 1 for the fish. And what I basically wanted to do with the fish is I wanted to kind of demonstrate how you can make every entity count and do a little bit of the like behind the scenes stuff, because at the moment these fish are like plastic cutouts. These are not fish. I would, if you come up to me and went, Griffin, I made a map, what do you think of these fish? I'd go, well, they're not moving, are they? Well, they're just sat there. Fish don't, I mean, yeah, plecos kind of sit there eating the bottom, but what are you doing? I mean, it's nice that there's fish in there, but should they not be doing something? They're living animals, right? Shouldn't they be moving around and stuff? So that's what this video is about. It's about bringing life to these very low resolution fish, because all of these fish are contained within 1 entity. Now, keeping in mind that to do this, that requires 2 entities to make a bleeping noise. Okay? And that's all it does. It bleeps. And I want to really put forward the importance, and it kind of goes into the heart of this map, of how you can get so much out of 1 little entity. These fish, and I'm going to have a few more plecos in there, and I'm going to have some smaller fish, but we'll get to that later. these fish are one entity. They are just one model on the map, and what I'm going to have these fish doing is I'm going to have them eating and swimming around and doing all kinds of other bits and pieces. They're going to swim around and interact with one another, and I'm going to really bring life to this fish tank so they're not just sat there like static models. I think his head's in that stick actually, and yeah, that's going to be it's going to be like a behind the scenes kind of me trying to figure out how to do these things, and I've got a few ideas in mind. So let me cut to my desktop. I'm going to have to figure out how to record from desktop and what I'm going to do, and yeah, I'll see you in a second. Okay, so here we are on my wonderful desktop, which I've actually cleaned up for you guys. Normally it's full of crap. So before we get on to this stuff, which is the main stuff that we're going to focus on here, I do want to mention these are actually the first part of the video. So yeah, this is actually, yes, the pre-stuff. Oh yes, the first part of the video that I was recording, so I'll have that there to work on later on. This folder here is the release pack, and this is the old stuff. So this is the stuff that I took out of the PK3, which was contained with Endurance. Let's see how much space I freed up. 444 megabytes. There was a total of 1,274 files that were not used in 46 folders. That was all stuff that didn't make the final cut of Endurance. And 273 is the total size of the release version. So there was basically more stuff in the pack than actually made the final cut, but that's normal for me. How many textures do we have for Endurance? 539. That's pretty good, not including all of the models. 318. That's not too bad. And how many sounds are in Endurance? 58 separate sounds. Well, isn't that interesting? So that's basically the end pack, and that's what I'm working from at the moment, and this is going to be our fish tank thing. Now you'll probably notice these things. I've been playing around with Unity a little bit as well lately, so one of the things I'm kind of been, obviously with my video saying I'm not going to be doing RPGX stuff anymore, is this is kind of where I'm going at the moment. I've spent the past 10 years, I think, since I was done with freelance, basically learning everything from this little thing down here, Game Maker Studio, all the way up to Unity and Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine's a bit complex for me at the moment, so I'm going to spend a year, maybe two, making some stuff in Unity. And one of the reasons why I was able to do so much with Endurance in terms of having like models spaced out correctly is because the first thing I wanted to do was learn how I could take stuff from Radiant and stuff that I do every day, and you know, my current skill set and tool set, and move it into other engines. So that allowed me to work out the spacing and the scaling, and it's contributed so much to the map. So you have to thank that little attribute of this to helping towards the overall Endurance map. So that's pretty good. Let's load up. Should I do my first game? Let's load up a couple of these just so you can laugh at them, because when you start on something you're terrible. So the first thing is I took an NX01 corridor, which I did for my Utopia Planitia map where I was just messing about, and I imported that into Unity. It doesn't import curves, but you'll get to see, wow, we got a little NX01 corridor, isn't that so cool? And the controls are terrible, like really, really terrible. This was like my first attempt, and I did it. I'll put up a screenshot of the Endurance corridor in Unity, and I put this NX01 corridor in the Unreal 4 engine as well, and this was made in EF Radiant for RPGX. So it looks kind of crappy. It's got no curves, it's got missing stuff everywhere, but it's not bad. Not bad for a first game. And then I'm just going to go into test game here. You'll notice the little RPGX healthy bar on the bottom left of the screen. I didn't like the first person controller that comes with Unity. You can just kind of drag it in, and mainly because I liked, well, I'll show you. So this is my little, it looks like RPGX but with like shinier graphics and stuff. This is basically my little test thing, because when you play on a PC you've got forward and you've got backwards, and that's it. That's all you have in terms of control, and that's kind of how the Unity default first-person controller works. But in my hand I have a controller, and I like to be able to vary my speed based on the input on the analog stick, and that doesn't come as default, so I had to write my own controller. And yeah, it's kind of funky. I got some concept art, some kind of like I think this archway is from like some concept art, and then I started adding in these kind of Star Trek-y details, and you'll probably notice like in these corners like these little things from the NX-01 and little bits and pieces, and plants look so crap on here. I'm going to have to actually start modelling real plants. And yeah, it's kind of like, oh, little doors work, and I got my Kronos there, and I've even got little bleepy consoles. Wow, isn't that so cool? That was my first proper kind of dive into Unity and fooling around with things. And this has the motion blur, this has like the post-processing pack that I think you can get off the store. It's free, and it's pretty good. It has some pretty cool effects, like it's all sparkly glowy, and you know, it's alright. It's not bad for a first game, is it? I mean, it's the first time I've ever made something in Unity, and that's kind of crap. And then I went on to project number 3, which has its own folder because I'm hoping of turning it into something. And project number 3 has a game design document, a code name of 1X. Even in my file names, I make sure that the actual name of the game is hidden and everything like that. And if we go into the current beta for this, who remembers classic old school Resident Evil? If you look on my channel on the using the Talk 3D engine, I made like a static camera angle tank control test of like a Resident Evil style game, and the Talk 3D engine just couldn't handle it. So I decided to drop it. But I've always wanted to make one. I love the original Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Remake, Code Veronica, 0. I miss the lack of tank controls in modern day games and how everything's got to be a first person or a third person shooter. So this one, you'll notice Leon from the Resident Evil 2 game. This one is a return to that kind of classic, like static camera angles and searching for stuff, and you know, it's so cool. I miss this so much. Why we don't have games like this anymore? I mean, granted, I've stolen the character model here, but this is going somewhere. This does have a theme and a design to it. And then you get the little door animations. I'd probably get rid of those, but I'd really like to make my own, not a Resident Evil fan game, but a game in the style of that. Maybe one day I could, you know, sell for a couple of quid just to fund my obsessions. And yeah, so I've just been playing around. The animation on this guy isn't too good because I wasn't able to. I got quick turn. Implementing that was funny. I had some bugs with that, but yay, quick turn. So yeah, that's just I don't know. They're just on my desktop permanently at the moment to remind me that when I'm done with Endurance, this is the first thing I'm going to be hitting. Oh, can I search those lockers? Did I put that in? There's nothing useful in these lockers. Well, isn't that good? And there's a toilet. Isn't that good? I actually got a fair bit of this house done. I just love the door animations. So classic Resi. So this is my 3rd game attempt in Unity. Oh, did you get the reference? Look at the table. The sandwich. Yeah? Get the reference? You gotta put references and things. I've actually done much down this side. Kinda. Yeah, I haven't done much down this end. There's going to be a zombie in here, so that's pretty cool. So I'm just kind of screwing around with things at the moment, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm getting off track here a bit now, but that's kind of a lot of what the stuff that I work on the side that I don't showcase because my channel's so Star Trek-y themed. That's kind of where the direction I'm moving in, and that's why I'm kind of excited to be leaving this stuff behind eventually, because I'm going to be able to go off and do entirely different things, and you get to watch me fail at every turn. So, anyway, this is meant to be about fish. Let me put my controller down, because that was all controller. I like using the controller for games like that. Okay, so, fish tank. Well, this is our fish tank. Okay, pretty simple. And then we have our fish in here somewhere. Oh, it's a gourami, a blue gourami. That's the type of fish. Clown loach, pleco, and blue gourami. So if we go to the bulk fish, this is basically lined up perfectly with the fish tank. So if I match the origin of this model with the fish tank in the quarters, the fish will line up perfectly. And I've kept this stuff here so I know how to avoid obstacles, and like if there's a stone and I want the pleco on the stone. You can't see the pleco at the moment because he's got an alpha channel. Let me hide the tank. There he is, little pleco down the bottom there. So basically I've just left that in there so I can move stuff around. You can see the top of the tank, and I can kind of see the area that I can move them around in. So that should be fun. So the first step is actually not going to be anything to do with these fish. The first step is I want smaller fish that are going to swim around, having like, because I'm probably going to have a couple more plecos in there, so having like 6 or 8 fish or whatever, that's not enough. I want loads of little fish, and the reason it took me so long to model these, despite the fact that they are very primitive models, the reason it took so long is because I had to pick fish species that weren't aggressive but were big so I could animate them. And in freshwater species, most of the time when you get to bigger fish, they tend to be predators or omnivores, and they will eat smaller fish. These are pretty docile, so I can put small fish in there, like little guppies and little things like that, and little minnows and stuff. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do, is actually I'm not going to touch these big fish yet, because I want to put the minnows in. But the minnows aren't going to be models. I'm not going to sit there and model a minnow and then animate it moving around, because I've only got one entity to play with here. So I'm going to use an old school technique. What I'm going to do, first off, I'm choosing to use Milkshape because it has like a generate control file which will store all the animation data and stuff, and it's just out the box. It's a little bit easier. Normally when I'm doing animation in particular, I'll go into Blender, and if we bring up our little, you should be pretty recent, yeah, our little Leon character, you can see that I do all of my animation and stuff in Blender and then export it out of Blender. But in this case we're going to be using Milkshape just because it's kind of default for RPGXy stuff. I'll still use it for Unity and things later on. I'll use Unity for a couple of years and then go on to Unreal, and I'll still use it for that because it's a good little tool. It's very quick, it loads up really quickly, and it's got pretty much all the basic stuff that you need. But most modelling nowadays is done doing what's called extrusion, and that isn't particularly easy to do on this. So you don't use that sculpting technique. It's more you take a vertex and say I want a door. I will place a door like that, and then I will turn it into a face, and that makes the front of my door, and there's my door, and then I can apply a texture to it or whatever else. But it's a very different style of modelling, Milkshape. It's I like it for objects because it's good for making straight edges and stuff. So let's start with a cylinder. Okay, cylinder is going to be important. I want its stack to be 1 and its slices. Let's stick with 12. So how is that a fish? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do a very old school technique that comes from kind of like old 2D games, where if you wanted clouds in the background going by, you would scroll the texture. So that's what we're going to do with this. I'm just going to make it a little bit lower. Is we're going to apply a texture. Now cylinders are really good because if I just quickly make a texture, and I know its width is going to be greater than its height, so if I say go for 1024 and a height of 128, I probably want more than that. Let's do image resize 1024 by 64. That's more like what I want. And then I do save as, and I go to fish tank, fish, and in here I'm going to want it to be a TGA because it's going to have an alpha channel, and we will call it, I don't know, small fish 1. Okay, so I'll grab a new material which I'll apply to this. I'll switch it to textured. It is already textured, that's handy. And we will do small fish 1. Okay, and what we can do is we can select this cylinder and apply that texture, and it will just be black like our texture. Now if we look at how this texture is applied to this cylinder, scale at 0.9 because it's 1024, you'll see that each face on the cylinder, it goes round and then it loops. Okay, so it's already applied. I don't have to do any UV unwrapping or anything. It's already applied to this texture. And what I'm going to want to do is basically at one end of this texture, I'm going to put a load of small fish. And then using a shader in the engine, I'm going to scroll those fish in the direction that they're facing across. And they'll just go round like a loop. So basically what that will do is it will give the effect, if you have all the fish and they're kind of like cardboard cutouts, so the rest of this is transparent and you just have these little fish going by, well, these little fish that are like cutouts, and they're scrolling by along here, it will look like they're swimming forward. And all you have to do is basically turn the cylinder into essentially the route that they're going to swim along. So this is the first thing that we're going to work on now. What I'm going to do is, I don't like the idea of them just swimming in circles. I want them to have a more erratic pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out this model, this cylinder, by just regrouping a section of it, taking this little vertex here, which will select both of these on this edge, and then we'll just move this out, and then we'll unhide this cylinder again, select them both together and regroup them. Okay, so if I was to say, for example, let's just do circle and then a square and then a triangle and then a round-edged rectangle, a hexagon, and then an octagon. And I was to save that quickly. Small fish one. We can see that we're basically at the circle here. But if you go round it, you can see that we've got our triangle, and it's going all the way around the outer edge there, and the circle's pretty much where it starts. We're not that far off. I mean, I think technically this is where we'd want, is where our fish would start, and they'd go round in that direction, so that's fine. Get rid of the wireframe overlay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this into a figure of 8, just because I think fish swimming round in a figure of 8 makes a lot more sense to me. Oh god, okay. Yeah, I ended up having to make 2 cylinders, and yeah, I totally balls it up. Basically what I did is, if I take one of these here, let's try and pick one near the camera, this one. What I had to do to bring the 2 edges of the loop together is I collapsed the vertices, so they collapsed in on the same space and became those 4 sets of vertices, which would have been 1, 2, and then say that was the other edge, 3, 4, those became the same, and those became the same. So it was just 2 vertices, but unfortunately I didn't just collapse them on the Z and the X-axis, I also collapsed them on the Y, which gave me that. And that means that your fish would shrink and then expand as they scroll round the loop. And I couldn't undo it enough to fix it, so I just went ahead and did 2 cylinders. These are all about the same size, and then merged them together, and I had to redo it from scratch. Unfortunately, the spacing of this isn't the same anymore. If you had done it that way, it would have worked fine. I'll have to sort that out later. It's not relevant. I mean, I've already covered that bit, so I'll sort that out on my own later on. So what the point that I was trying to get to there before I messed it up was, if you look at draw back faces, if I disable that, each of these faces only points in one direction. It's not double-sided. So basically, if I was just to render this as is, these faces here, which you can see are grey, have totally disappeared. If I do draw back faces, it draws them as black. But they would totally disappear. Now, most of the work for these fish, believe it or not, this is a fish, or a series of fish, is actually going to be done in shaders, and I'll showcase the shaders and what they're doing later on. But basically, we would use a technique called cull disable, which basically means that each of these faces would be double-sided. It would disable the culling, which is the removal of you know, well, the rendering of only one side of the face, and instead you would see both sides of the face. So I think in Blender you can do something like reverse normals and it changes the size of the face. Here we can do face reverse vertex order, and you can see that now these faces become visible and the others don't. So, and I have a funny fit. Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Don't panic. Everything is fine. Everything is absolutely fine. I can't believe I balls that up and it's the easiest thing. Okay, let's keep wireframe overlay so we can see what we're doing. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to put this into our fish tank, but we're going to hide some of our fish. Let's get rid of the fish first. Hide all of these fish. Now I'm not worried about plants, because fish can swim in between the gaps of plants, so I'm actually going to hide that which I know to be bubbles and plants. Like that. So it's only these physical things that really I'm concerned about. The fish can swim pretty much anywhere here and it doesn't matter, as long as they're basically between... Oh god. I'd do something stupid, wouldn't I? There we go. So they can basically swim anywhere in this gap, just as long as they are within the confines of the tank and they don't hit any of these things down the bottom. I really should have... You know, I don't prep these things, I just go ahead and do them. Probably a bad call. So, let's get our little figure of 8 and let's just move it up to the fish tank. So if I did that, for example, it's a very, very small figure of 8. And they would just kind of swim around like that. But what I want them to do is like go behind this, go behind the plants. I want to scale it up a little bit, which might be a little bit more complicated than I thought because this tank is so wide. I'm not going to keep this shape with all of these the same size. So I am going to have to remap it anyway, based on which is longer, which is smaller, to stop them distorting so much. I don't know, maybe I can find a way to just scale it up equally at the moment. So we want to ignore the Y. Let's see what I would get if I get it to the maximum edges of the tank dimensions here. Oh, nope. Centre of mass. So they've kind of got about that much room to spin. To spin? To swim. Okay. I could do one either end. I could rotate it so they swim upwards. I could even... Let's hide all the vertices of this because I'm... Oh, just the vertices. I could even, theoretically... have them swim like that. So they'd kind of swim in and out of the plants, and then they'd go to the back, and then they'd swim round. And let's bring this down and tuck it. It is just about intersecting that rock there. I reckon that's enough. You wouldn't see him hit that rock, so they swim kind of underneath the log. I can move this over a little bit more. That's alright. So they kind of swim in and around the log. So that's one of them. And then I am going to want another one, so I'll duplicate that. And hide the original. And let's move these over here. Rotate these back up. So be kind of swimming around like that. Do they intersect? No. So I'd kind of collect in the middle and then swim out towards the edges. And there's plenty of room in the middle for larger fish. Yeah, that's alright. I mean, I'd like them to go behind the rocks more. And I'd like them to kind of come under here and stay low, and then maybe have one that's higher up. But that's okay. That's okay, I don't mind that. That will do the job. So, that's pretty much it, really, with this element. All I'm going to have to do is evenly space these, which, I mean, it's not too difficult to do that. I'll do it later, because I can do them together then and then regroup them, so that's fine. So all I'm going to do is just regroup those temporarily and just hide them. We are going to need them flat shaded for reference for the bigger fish. But I'll get onto the shader side of these later on, and I'll show you, I'll put up on the screen now ultimately how I mapped them on the texture and kind of equalized it and made it look a little bit more balanced. I kind of made sure these were all the same size and whatnot, so they don't distort too much going around the fish tank. So let's leave that at that. That was kind of a bit of an epic failure, but it will do the job. When you see the shader in place, it will work. So what we're going to do now is I think we're going to start with our little pleco, because I really like our little pleco. And basically what we're going to want to do is this is where animation comes in. If you remember one of my past videos, I had like some animated crewmen. I'm going to have some coffee because my throat's getting dry. Nice. I had some animated crewmen who were like working and doing stuff. And unfortunately animated models that are like world object models only animate at 15 frames per second without frame blending. So they're going to look very, almost as if all these fish have Parkinson's. They're going to be shaking around a lot and very, very skippy. That's normal. I mean, it's better than having stationary fish, right? So we're going to have 15 frames per second. That's all we have to play with. We can't change the speed. We can't do anything with that. So I think, thinking about it, I think about all these fish as well are going to be in the same animation. They're not going to be separated out into models of different length, different animation lengths. They're all going to be one animation, one loop that goes round. And I think 30 seconds is probably going to be about enough. So 30 seconds at 15 FPS, what's that, 450 frames. So let's just quickly switch over to animation. And down here we've got total frames, and we'll set it to 450. And this one here is max frame. I don't know what that is. Is that max frames per second? I think it might be max frames per second. So that gives us our animation toolbar. But we can turn that off because we know we want 450. And basically we need to start animating these little guys. So I'm going to select everything and hide it temporarily. And then I'm going to take my little pleco, make sure animation is disabled so I can play around with him. And I'm going to want about 3 of these, I think. So I'm just actually going to duplicate him a few times and just move a couple of other plecos out here. So we'll take him, and we'll just hide him. And basically looking at this model, you have to think about what you want to move. His head, his main body is just going to be a lump. I have put his little fins in because I would like to see them kind of waving around a little bit, and I've put quite a dense amount of vertices around the tail so I can kind of have the tail go backwards and forwards and flap about like he's swimming. So which one are you? You're the original pleco, so let's move you all the way down to the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to make some joints. Okay, not the most interesting thing. There's a joint. It's really not that interesting. We start with the main joint, which is the main one. This joint will move the model around, and we want it to be the head. We're not going to get much in terms of movement out of the head. So let's make sure that that's lined up pretty dead center of the model. And I'll probably put it, because his whole head's going to be attached to it, I'll probably put it near the fins, where the fins join the body here. Because what I'm going to then do is I'm going to do a joint that comes off of that, connected to the fin, and then we'll select this joint again, and I'm just going to do a joint that comes off of that, that's connected to that fin, It's about the same. So these will control his fins. And then probably what I'll do is I'll do 2 more joints. I will do a joint. You can see that these have turned green because this is the parent joint. So if I move this joint around, those move with it. And that's why it's the main one attached to the head. And we're just going to do... This is the worst animating software ever, but it's ideal for what I want. We're going to do another one attached to that, which is going to be like near the middle of the tail. And then I want the tip of the tail, so I'm going to do another joint. I'm going to have to do this for each individual little fish, by the way, which I'm not overly looking forward to. Probably about there, I'd imagine. Okay, so as you can see, this one is the parent of this one is the parent of all. So if I move this to choose where I want him to be, or I rotate it, all the other joints are going to respond to this. So what we need to do now is we need to select what we want to be assigned to each. Now, funny enough, these fins, because these are part of the main body, let's look at the vertices here and hide joints, show skeleton. These vertices, sorry, here, are actually part of the body. They're where the fins join the body. Right there. So we're going to want those to be attached to the main one. So really, for the fins, the only stuff that's going to be moving are these 2 little vertices here are going to be what allow him to flap his fins. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing this thing moving. I think it's going to be quite cute. Okay, so joint 2, we double click on it to select it, and then we select these vertices, and I believe this is the way you do it. You don't do it by faces, and then you do assign. And hopefully, if I switch back to animation mode and I select this joint, and we look at this fish here, hopefully if I rotate it from the center of the fish, his little fin should go up and down. Or do I have to move it? Rotation is kind of working, but because it's here, I think it's probably a little too low. Hang on. Let's come off of animation. And let's just select this one as well and move it down level with the fin. And I think the rotational point is actually going to be where it joins the body. I'm actually really looking forward to this. Okay, so let's select this joint here again. Go back to animation. Let's turn it on to textured and see if we can get him to wave his little fin. Yeah, he's lit. He's waiting. Oh god, that's brilliant. Hang on. Woo! Hi, Mum. That's brilliant. Look at his little fin go. Okay, let's calm this down. Oh god. If I go back to animation, yeah, it's good. Okay, so that's one fin. 2 vertices assigned to one. So we're going to go to joint 3, which is the other side. We're going to select. We need to select vertices. We need to select these 2. We're not going to do much in terms of weight painting. And we're just going to assign that. Okay. So now hopefully if we switch to this side of the fish and we select this joint and we go to animation and we do rotate. Yay, he's got 2 little fins we can move. That's so cool. I love it. I have so much fun with this. Oh, so we got a little fish with 2 simple little fins that move. Isn't that brilliant? Now we need to do the main body. So what I'm actually going to do is hide these. And try and think. Rotational, I think this is going to be the rotation point. So I'm actually going to move this joint forward. I'm used to working with bones in Blender, so they have a slightly different position. That's kind of where I want things to rotate from. And then the actual tail, I want it to rotate from this point here. So let's just bring those in a little bit. So the next one we want to do is the main one. And the main one, let's hide that which we have already worked on, so we don't select it again by accident. Just hide those. And I think the main body is basically going to be that plus those. that's going to be the main body. So if we do, oops, got to select the joint first, and then add these to the selection, and then do assign. Now what I would expect to see is if I select this joint, if I unhide my pleco here completely, and oh god, I'm going to have to do unhide all, and then I'm going to have to hide all of these quickly. Okay, so if I select this joint and switch to animation mode, now when I move it, he'll leave his tail behind. Yeah? So his body moves, but his tail does not, because everything's assigned there. So what we want to do now is we want to go on to this one, which I believe is joint 4, and we want to assign the vertices that are going to be part joint 4, which I think is pretty much that part of the tail. So we'll do joints and we'll do assign, and then the last thing we'll do is we'll select the last joint, which is the final tail joint, and we'll select these 3 on the end and do assign. Okay, so going back to here, if we go into animation, and we'll have a look at textured version, projection, top of the fish, oh, bottom of the fish. Okay, that's kind of weird that it's showing the underside of the fish. Let's not do that then. Let's just do it in here. Okay, so we do rotation via center of mass, joints, hide skeleton. Okay, so what I can do now is flap his little tail. Oh my god, look at that! I think something's off with that. Maybe I should do rotate user point. Oh, that's pretty cool. So we'd have a little flap like that, and then if we go to joints and we do show skeleton again, and we just select that very last, let's do this quickly. Let's do a rotate of that, followed by a rotate of this. We got a little fish swimming, kind of halfway through a pose. And that should reset it, right? Yeah. So there we go. So we now have, and if we select this main joint again, and we go to animation here, you'll see that the whole fish moves with the joint. That is so cool. I really enjoy this now. Okay. So basically we have 450 frames, and because it's a loop, he's going to want to return to the position that he starts by the end of the loop, so it just goes round and round and round. So I think we'll start by just moving him, seeing how we want him to move, getting him to eat, because he's a bottom feeder, so we'll be going nom 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 on the rocks. This is, oh god, I really enjoy this now. This fish tank, I mean, the effort is so fun. I mean, it's barely any effort. Okay, so we're going to start with this pleco. And what we're going to do with this little guy, I wonder if I can copy and paste this rigging. I might be able to copy and paste it and delete the other 2 pleco, and that would save me some time. But we'll have a little look. So what we're going to do is, he's going to start his animation pose. It's going to be kind of difficult. What I want to do is I want to kind of have him on this rock, like his mouth on this rock, like he's eating it, or like eating from the rock. Give him a slight angle. Nom. No, wrong angle. Kind of like that. Let's just do that. Okay, so if I just hide the skeleton and get rid of the wireframe. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Wireframe overlay. So that's where our little pleco is going to start. He's going to start on this rock, and I think I'm going to get him to go nom 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 nom, move up, and then maybe like rotate slightly, so then he can swim sideways back to the starting position. So he's pretty much just going to be munching on this rock. That's how we're going to do our little pleco friend. So with this joint selected, if we go to animate, you've got to operate on selected joints only, and that's what I want to do. I'm going to set a keyframe, and it'll turn yellow. And that basically means that no matter what happens, that's where that's going to be. And we do set keyframe at the end as well. I don't know what max frame is doing. Because animate set keyframe. Why aren't you doing it? That one's yellow, this one is not. Let's just do 450 for now and make sure, because that might actually be the maximum frame that you can work on. Well, hopefully that'll be okay. We can always go animate copy keyframe and then paste it at the end of the animation. So this is about 30 seconds, and if I was to play it, which I think I can do there, let's give a little example. I think it will play at 30 FPS. So if I do 15, which is a second, and in that 15 seconds I just want him to move forward. Nothing too fancy there. And I just did animate set keyframe. If I go back and we look at this view, we can see that he's moving forward. Now if we do it at speed, that doesn't look like it's running at 15 FPS. Oh, come on. That is pretty slow actually. At 30 FPS, 15 frames, that's half a second. It's very difficult when this by default runs at 30 FPS. So that would just be our little fish moving forward. Okay, so let's go back to 15 FPS and try and map out exactly what we want this guy to do, just in terms of movement. So let's delete the keyframe there. So he starts here, and I want him to go nom nom nom. What is nom nom nom? How are we going to do that? I would suggest probably doing like 5 frames, and then I would say that it was kind of like a thrust forward and then a return to the original position. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of like move him forward and down slightly. I don't like his starting rotation. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to rotate him up slightly, just so he's face down. Nom. Animate set keyframe. Okay, and then we'll go to maybe like 5 frames. Oh, 5 frames, and we'll like move him forward slightly. Animate set keyframe, and then we'll move forward 10 frames and we'll copy the original keyframes. So we'll do copy keyframe and we'll go to 10 frames, paste keyframe, animate, set as keyframe. So basically what he'll do is like nom. I moved him forward to nom, nom, nom. That is fantastic. Oh, what fun. Oh, what fun. Let's move him back a little bit, because I don't think I want him to be that aggressive with his noms. Oh, God. Nom. That's it. Like a little peck. Nom. 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 3. Nom. 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 It's just like pecking at the floor. That's so cool. I love it. I love it. So, peck. And then maybe we'll move him forward. And move his rotation slightly. I think I'm going to move him over here and do a slight change to his rotation and do animate set keyframe. So he's going to kind of go nom and then move over, at which point it's probably a good idea to do a nom. Where's the keyframe for that one? There we go. So that's the keyframe for that. And then what we'll probably do is we'll move forward by a few more frames. And then we'll just move them slightly forward. Set keyframe. And then we'll go back to this keyframe. And we'll do animate copy keyframes. Yum. And we'll add on maybe 4 more and do animate paste. and set keyframe. So at the moment he's going yom, and then he's moving over and going yom. 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 Now I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. The level of detail that I go to have a pleco eating off of a rock. So that is the basic movement of this fish. This little pleco at the moment. It's running at probably double speed, but it'll do some little peckins. And then he'll kind of sit there for a while, nom 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 nom. Move forward a little bit, and then he'll kind of swim off onto another thing, and then he'll move forward slightly, and then he'll spin around, and he'll like swim back. And it doesn't look all that interesting. You know, he's very rigid and stiff at the moment, but it's just marking out, basically you want to mark out the key frames, the key areas of movement, and then we can add in the fins moving, we can add in a little bit more animation over time and make that look a lot better. So that's probably what I'm going to do now, and then I'll do a video just showing what that's like when it's finished. I'll just try and tidy it up a little bit, but it's really just a matter of keyframing and like doing the tail and the fins now, so they're kind of flowing around and doing all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll try and tidy that up, and then I'll go back to recording, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay guys, so I've done a little bit more animation work. He's going to take a little bit more time. The plecos are actually the hardest ones because they're kind of gripping on the rocks and things. But I just wanted to kind of give you, you know, show his tail moving. I haven't done his other fins yet. Let's just have a little look at the animation. Keeping in mind that this is at double speed, I have no idea what this is going to look like when it's exported and put into the map. So let's just have a little look-see. Nom nom nom. And he sits there for a little while, and then kind of swims forward a little bit, and then he swims over and attaches to the side, and then forward a little bit more, and then the animation kind of, I haven't finished the animation there. So that should be quite interesting to see how it's going to look at half that speed. Now what I'm going to do is, this is obviously going to take a bit of time, and my recording window's closing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to export this as it is now. It's saved, so I can carry on working on it. And we'll just see it in game, and at the same time what I'll do as well is I will I'll make the textures for these, and then I'll show you at the very end what the shaders are doing for these, and just generally see how it looks. It probably isn't reflective of what it's going to look like when it's finished, but it just gives you an idea of some of the techniques and stuff that I'm kind of using to basically fill this fish tank with fish. So hopefully the next shot you will see will be this in-game and me laughing my head off. Okay, that's pretty cool. So here's our little pleco. Nom nom. You can see that kind of staggering 15 frames per second going on there. It's kind of very juddery. So that's pretty cool. Quite happy with that. Just kind of moving along, and eventually all the fish will move. It works okay, and then you've got this really slow where I haven't done any more, and it's just kind of but it's certainly better than just having a static fish that looks like like a stuffed animal. It will certainly add a little bit more to the tank, especially when everything's moving. And then of course we can see our fish, and you can see where it's distorted, and I haven't sorted out the UV in yet, which is kind of cool because it kind of makes them look like they're darting about. Now they're both, it's all the same texture on both. I'd actually have two separate textures ultimately, so you've got two different types of fish, probably moving in opposite directions, so they're not moving around in the same way like that. I'd probably do opposites to one another, and I'm probably going to change kind of the way they move around and where they go and stuff like that later on. So but this is just kind of a proof of concept. So you can see you've got your little fish. I'd also probably make them no light maps, so because they look a bit dark, or I might blend them in a different way, but we'll see. So yeah, let me just go over the shader for those as well. Okay, so the shader, basically, I'll put it up on the screen now. It's very, very simple. You just have the first line is just where the texture is. and this is what the engine will actually look up when it loads up that and uses that material. It'll actually look up to see if it's referenced in any of the shader files. The more shader files you have, the more memory that's being used. Possibly one of the problems why Asteria doesn't work for some people is because they just download the Last Outpost Ultimate Edition, which contains hundreds and hundreds of different maps, and yeah, it's going to cause conflicts. It's using a lot of memory. So what I tend to do is empty out everything that I'm not actively using apart from the core RPGX stuff, and then just put in what I want to use at the time, and it makes it much more stable. But there we go. So it'll basically load up the shader file, it'll look through all the shader files for that list of materials, so that'd be models, RPN, personal items, small fish 1. Then, like I said earlier, we've got the cull disable, which means you can see it from both sides. And then the next one is map, which could also be replaced with anim map if you wanted to have, say, like a little animation going on with, like, I think it's up to 12 frames you can have, and this is just map because it doesn't have that animation, which just lists the actual texture file. Then you've got alpha func G128, which is basically just a blending method, and RGB gen light and diffuse. Again, that's to do with, I think that's actually applying the lighting on top of it. I think that's what it's doing. It's been a while. I just copied this shader from my bar shader, but that's pretty much all it's doing. Then you've got TC mod, or texture coordinate modifier, which is set to scroll, and then you've got X and Y on the texture. So the first one is across or horizontal, and the second one is vertical. And I've got it scrolling at minus 0.2 speed, which will be whatever that translates to. It'll be I don't know, a particular number of pixels it moves over per frame or whatever. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very simple shader, and when they're actually fully implemented and stuff and fully lit and everything, it's going to look pretty cool with them swimming all the way around all the plants there and in and out, and then they go through the plant and back out, and then they go back around the back. That's going to look absolutely awesome. And then obviously when our little Pleco has some moving friends in there, even though it is a bit staggery, it's certainly better than stuffed animal looking fish. And we'll have them swimming around, some of them higher up, some of them in the middle. It's a pretty big job really just for fish, but come on, a fish tank with fish in it, it's going to be awesome. Anyway, I hope that gives you... Wait, is he going through that rock? No, he's good. So anyway, yeah, I hope that gives you a basic kind of look at some of the behind the scenes stuff and how you can have... This is just one entity, remember, it's just one thing, and it's got so much going on, and it's going to have so much movement with all the little fish moving around. I don't know, there's just something about it that I just thought was worth showcasing. I thought it was quite an interesting idea, doing it all in one big chunk. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you got something out of it. Have fun.